Not how the world is the mystical, but that it is. Ludwig Wittgenstein and the astonishment of being. Welcome to the Hidden Bridge. I'm Henry, your facilitator here. Tonight, or in this video rather, I'm going to delve into mystery. I'll show you that mystery is the one topic that should be discussed, but no one is discussing. It ties together a lot. And rather than trying to explain it now up front, I will show you that through the video. What I would like you also to just take in mind, this is my interpretation. I do not claim to be the expert. I do not claim final authority, but this is what I have seen, what I have experienced, what I have lived, and my interpretation. In my quest for a new wisdom tradition, I arrived at mystery as the third pillar of the right-hand side of the irreducible phenomenon called consciousness, of which there's a lot of discourse, but very few people like to step back and say we don't know what consciousness is. So why don't we just sit back and see what consciousness does? And I hope on this journey, tonight in this video, you will enjoy seeing a part of really, it's a core part of my life's work, and putting this together really helped me to show a part of how I see the world, but then also the challenge is how to make this practical. So I've got a whole section on that and what we can learn from and how we can apply what we learn here. Because personally for me, that really changed a lot of things in me in putting it all together in a systematic approach. So with all that, let's go forward. As I said, this is pretty much who I am. This is my story. Frameworks, stories, practices, seeing how it all fits together. This is something that has pulled me for a long time. It's always been in my life, and trying to understand it is a life's work, really, but I'm not at a point where I will proclaim this is the magnum opus and the total totality of what I'm busy with. It is the first step in a journey. So it's also our third video in our 6 Areas of Consciousness series. Upcoming, we will do the left-hand reducible side, but for now we focus on the irreducible side. We've already did spirituality, which I basically stated is resonance, alignment, and coherence. We did religion, which in essence is narrative, personal and group, ritual, personal and group, and then of course communion with those in the group. This is key parts of how consciousness expresses itself in the human condition. So before we debate on whether there is a God and all of those senseless debates, and I'll show you a beautiful quote later on how I view this, let's look at what is really happening. What can we observe, but from an irreducible and looking at the expression of the unknowable. And mystery was the third and missing pillar. So let's look at what is mystery. So my 6 areas of consciousness really was brewing in my mind, but then I read Iain McGilchrist, the master, and his emissary. Always forget, I always say the master and servant, it just comes up so quickly. But the master and his emissary, where he explained the different functions of the brain, and he just basically showed that there's a real gap. Modern thought privileges analyse, abstraction, control, and utility, and that's the left brain. We all know it. You see it in all the create scientific videos and so on. We measure, we categorize, we put in place. But symbol, relation, presence, metaphor, and participation are ignored, and Einstein said to our detriment, because that is how we think. What can be measured is not the whole of what can be known. And that is the problem with all the reductionist views that you will find in pretty much all the scientific, all the self-help, and even the pop spirituality of the day. McGilchrist reveals the epistemic gap that made a missing domain visible for me. The gap is not ignorance, it is the limitation of attention. And as I would say, the language of consciousness. How does our brain work with this? What is the architecture required to understand this missing domain? So basically, as I said, with spirituality and religion, I very early on saw that there's something that we can work with here called archetype, pattern, and symbol, and the process of human cognition. Now, the process of human cognition is something, once again, that the materialist reductionist worldview has flipped upside down. Once again, I refer you to Albert Einstein's quote on the intuition being the gift and logic and rational being its faithful servant. Yet we serve the servant and glorify the servant, but we ignore the gift. Unfortunately for all those, they do not account for the human experience. No matter how you slice it, no matter how you dice it, they don't explain why we cry, why we dream, why we have hope, why we search for meaning. What is meaning? So here is my question to all those people who are stuck, and there are beautiful, brilliant people. I will actually refer to some of them because I would literally invite you to go and watch them. Beautiful thinkers, just off the cuff: Alex O'Connor, Joe Foley, even people like Robert Lawrence Keane when it comes to consciousness. Go and listen to them. I don't have to agree with them to think that they are brilliant in what they do. I would like to extend, let's go a bit further. Let's step back, stop trying to categorize and put into a box. Let's step back and say, listen, what is this? Does it walk like a duck? Does it quack like a duck? Do we have a photo of it actually looking like a duck? Are we sure it's not just a costume of a duck? And then, of course, with the fight with the AI is stop insisting on a double-blind DNA test to prove that it's a duck when we have all the other pieces. So let's go forward. So when you deal with Carl Jung, of course, Carl Jung is the master and the father of the concept of archetype. He really explains how it works from the individual, from the collective, and how it functions in the psyche. And I'm going to use psyche different from mind, because mind for me is the agentic part of the human psyche. The psyche is something bigger. All manly all you cannot ignore. If we say that mystery is archetype, pattern, and symbol, then Manly P. Hall wrote the library of all the traditions. Whether you like him or not, whether you trust him or not, that is not the question. He is the librarian of some symbols and also mystery traditions. So we'll get to why mystery traditions, the mysteries and mystery are not the same thing, but they are related. And then, of course, the real penny drops when you get to Joseph Campbell. Everybody is familiar with the hero's journey. You saw that in many leadership workshops. People have muddied the water. You know, the elephants are through and now there's just mud. But Campbell, more than the hero's journey, or his actual story is the hero of 1,000 faces, was a studier, a student of mythology. He studied the story, the pattern, the archetype, and the symbol, and how it's expressed. So if you look at those three authors, and you understand that we have a missing part of cognition, then you come to mystery. And then you ask yourself, but what the ancients studied as the mysteries is the architecture of consciousness, while the mystery itself is the language. How does it relate to human cognition? Well, I would say mystery is the language of consciousness, beating in all our hearts, reminding us how little we actually know. This beautiful infographic, the idea is actually to make it available at some stage as white pen plotted prints. From mystery is the field, archetypes, pattern, and symbols is cognition and the human soul and how it relates. I'm not going to go through all of this, but you can see that literally at the deepest level your brain functions in symbols, pictures, and emotions. And if we understand the process, we start with mystery. Your brain forms the archetype, it sees the pattern, it encodes it as a symbol, which it then processes. And you have a soul or experience about it, and you attach a meaning to it. Of course, if we're going to study one of the techniques I developed on mystery, then you reverse that and you say, if I want to attach meaning to something, how do I place it in a picture that I condense into a symbol and attach emotion to it? Oh, did someone not do that? Wasn't there traditions where this was done? Don't they call it sigils? But that's the occult, and that's magic, and that's, yeah, it's a mystery. It's how the human mind works. So if you strip the fluff and you understand the amazing interface that you have inside your head, and that's once again the debate on consciousness is not for this video. It's coming at the end of the second series I'm doing as the final video, whether our brain is just an interpreter of the field and not the only generator of consciousness, because there's certain things we need to clarify before we get there. But so when you think of sigils and symbols, it's just a way to compress information so that it's easy for the brain to understand it. The problem is we have forgotten how to handle this. But if you go 2,300 years ago to Athens and you speak in symbols and myths, they will know exactly what you said. Go further back to Egypt, Persia, they would know exactly what you're talking about because they encoded their wisdoms in archetypes, patterns, and symbols. Yet when we now read those scripts from the Bible all the way to the Gita, we want to read it literally. So here's a statement you can think of. I would call, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita, the Rig Veda, the Bible, and yes, I'll put it out there, even the Quran. It's written as an Near Eastern or Far Eastern esoteric script. We're going to get to those definitions. Not a historical document. So when you want to argue from historicity and literal translation, you are already missing the point. What the symbols mean, that's a debate worth having. Who wrote what text? Lots of debates I watched about that. Does it matter if the narrative is coherent with the larger picture that was painted? That's also something to think of. You've got a lot of text. I'm going to specifically have an uh, graph that I did on, well, a graph picture I did on the book of Revelation in the Bible, because I think in terms of mystery, archetype, pattern, and symbol, it is probably the densest text I've ever seen. And yet people want to read it from a literal point of view, which is absolutely showing the fact that we have forgotten how to read mystery. So sorry for the rant, but I had to clear that up. So understand that mystery is not, but it is related to the mystical and the mystic, which is called direct experiences. The mysteries, which is just the ancient study of being. Quite interesting, eh? That the ancient people weren't worried about planetary orbits and stuff for the sake of being cool and having PhDs. They studied because they thought it explained being. So the ancient word for cosmology is called the mysteries. The mystery schools were institutional forms, but not necessarily formal buildings. But I will put it out there that most universities originated from mystery schools. I mean, originally, most universities, you could only study religion, theology, and divinity. Think about that. What did they do before then? What was the purpose of madrasas in the Islamic world? Confucian academies is something different, because Confucius is quite unique, but we do not ignore him. Actually, he comes in the form of his yang, if I can call it that, or I just call it his chi partner, because they were in a similar time, Lao Tzu or Lao Tzu and Confucius, they go together. You have to read both. Mythical and myth. Do you honestly think that Zeus threw lightning bolts? Or is that something else? Did he fight gigantic giants and lock them up in Tartarus, the deepest pits of Hades? How is that related to Enoch and the Watchers? I see a lot of stuff about that. People forget the Nephilim, in which Odin locked the giants, and though no AI will admit or even want to acknowledge that Nephilim and Nephilim seems to be related, although it's completely contextual, separate worlds. Lots of that going on in the ancient world. But hey, let's stick for now with the academic view that cultures evolved in silos, meaning was not transferred, and people did not interact and assume meaning. That's the academic standpoint, and that's why you will not find mystery in a university. The esoteric, this is something that really trips people up. Esoteric just means internal interpretation, an internal experience, insight, or wisdom. Its opposite is exoteric. Unfortunately, that's many religion traditions today. The occult is another one. And you see how deeply ingrained the misuse of occult is when you look at AI printouts, which literally, unless you point it out, will tell you that the occult is synonym to evil. It is not. Occult comes from deliberately hidden, or sometimes not even deliberately, but what is hidden? Because we'll also discuss that the mysteries are not for everybody, because as long as you operate out of the ego, this is one of the greatest destructive forces the world has ever seen. So we must be very careful in what we do here. We also should not say that Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and some of the others, which I probably should not even mention here, are the mysteries. They are modern mystery traditions. Useful, yes. Containers of wisdom, yes. Each has its flaws, but each also have wisdom to learn from. And one of the interesting stuff here we could look on, but I'm probably not going to do that today, is Hermetic principles. Kabbalion is pretty much a Rosicrucian text based on Neoplatonism, Platonism, depending on how you want it. We also should just quickly define there's a huge difference between magic with a C and magic with a K, the Aleister Crowley version. I am going to mention Mr. Crowley a lot today. I'm not a fan, because when you study Thelema, you realize that he really did something. He was basically handing himself over to his dark side, because once again, mystery will show you that those things that people do is not external forces, it's internally inside you. But magic with a C, if you once again take away the fluff, just becomes a form of visualization, a form of embodiment. And for better or worse, whether you believe in it or not, I don't know. That's discussions worth having and worth investigating. So, being mystical doesn't equal the mysteries. That is a experience you're having, and a spiritual experience many times. Myth and history are not the same. We see a lot of discussion on the Odyssey at the moment. I'm not going to get into that. But as J.R.R. Tolkien would said, history became legend, and legend became myth. And then myth became embellished, I would add. But in myth there is truth. In myth there is compressed archetypes, symbols, patterns, and a human expression. So just say it's just a story is a statement of ignorance. Esoteric doesn't mean mystical. Esoteric is usually linked to an inner wisdom. Occult does not equal evil. I explained that. And then institution does not mean the truth. And if you have not seen this in the last 4 years, then I don't know on what planet you've lived. So, think summary-wise, mystical, the mysteries, mystery schools, mythical, esoteric and occult are all terminology we can use, but it does not define mystery itself. So, I said I'll show you a picture from Revelation. Behold, the mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of all harlots. With her the kings of the earth have fornicated. I'm going to leave it there. You can start thinking, what does it really mean? I can pretty much tell you what the author meant by it, but yeah, lots of stuff people are trying to still impose on this image. But if you really do on it, ask yourself, where are you fornicating with Babylon the Great? Where have you sacrificed yourself for the mundane and the temporal? And, well, you're human, so maybe you shouldn't sometimes. I don't know. Things to think about. Things to discuss. Never have an absolute view about anything, especially if you're working with mystery. So the oldest language of consciousness is patterns. We see it everywhere. The human mind literally runs from pattern. Nature reveals recurring forms and rhythms. We encounter cycles and seasons, tides, birth, growth, death, decay, and renewal. The night sky, moon phases, constellations. This is what humans have been seeing ever since they got cognition different, or let's just say different from that made it, but basically what makes us human. Pattern is one of the oldest experiences of consciousness. And unfortunately for all the reductionists, That's your first port of call of cognition. You do not see a lion and say, I wonder, is that a cat or a dog? Does it have yellow or slightly golden hair? Is it really spotted or not? The pattern will not allow you to do that. If a lion walks into your room right now, you will see, oh shit, I need to get the hell out of here. That's just the truth. Why? Because it's a deeply ingrained pattern in the human mind. Only once you are safe and secure and have a stable, coherent environment will you stop thinking about objectifying and classifying the lion. So why do we insist that you start with the measurement and classification? Because that's not how the brain functions. And you can see the breakdown in the world around us because we insist that that is the highest and the only way. Of course, from patterns we can see, and this is where it becomes the mysteries, sacred geometry. So my go-to guy here, I love him. He's just a beautiful person, is Randall Carlson. I know there's a lot of people criticizing him for working with Graham Hancock on the Atlantean story. Make of that what you will. But Randall Carlson on sacred geometry makes it accessible for everybody. And just once again, look at basic stuff we have here, from the flower of life, the seed of life, the Vesica Pisces, the golden ratio, and pi. All are related to how perfectly everything is ratioed to one another. I didn't especially address fractals here, but especially when you're working with consciousness, fractals become very important. But we see that in the flowers, that basically sort of we see evolving. But somebody said, even if you look at a leaf is a tree. But on leaves on trees, that's fractals. Beautiful, beautiful thing. And because we can see that, now we are making the pattern and the measurement into start making it in a symbol and archetypes. The missing link here that most people miss is Gestalt. Coming from a coaching background and having some Gestalt training, I'm not a master, but that is the human brain's ability to fill in the blank. Whether we see human faces, we like to make pictures out of patterns. The psyche fills in the blanks and it creates the picture. Based on similarity, and the brain doesn't like white noise. Let's just put it like that. We fill in the blanks and complete the unfinished form. Pattern is not only seen, but we form the pattern. We create patterns. So yes, you've got the natural cycles, but we are the ones experiencing it as a pattern and giving meaning to the pattern. And from Gestalt comes the archetype. Now we've assigned meaning. The old man, the hermit, the high priest, the warrior, the high priestess, the empress. That's tarot names. We'll get to that. The Amazon warrior, if you want. The coward. These are all archetypes, which means that we've assigned meaning and emotion to a pattern. And of course, finally, we encode that into a symbol. So this is where Jung comes in, and that links mystery work to dreams. We'll talk about that later on in the application side. Archetype is sort of the first expression of the subconscious mind. I don't want to go too deeply into that, but it's it's where we add the emotion and the narrative. You don't just see an archetype, you see a story. This is the threshold where pattern becomes metaphysical and archetypal. Some patterns become living forms within the psyche. Your boss is not just mean to you, he's the dragon. Your friends aren't just people you like, they are your traveling companions, because those are archetypes. And lastly, we encode it into symbols. This is compressed mystery, and yes, most likely, I don't have any proof from my side. There's a lot of neuroscientists that can help me here if they would like, but that's how we store the information. We compress it into deep living patterns of the psyche. Symbols compress those patterns into image, story, ritual, and myth. Whether it's the tree, the mirror, the serpent, the mandala, the mountain, a star become a carrier of meaning. If you have recurring patterns in your dreams, take note of what they are, because maybe your car is not your car, it's a symbol of yourself. Maybe a friend who is highly successful is not a friend who is highly successful, but it's your higher self asking you to step up to the plate. And that is the power of understanding and working with mysteries. And when you start reading all these ancient texts that we call about from this perspective, they become something completely different. And that's what makes it beautiful, and why I am so drawn into mystery as an approach at looking at the world. Symbol is the visible language of mystery. Quick check-in here. Think of all the corporate symbols that you like or dislike. What do they mean? Do you know where those symbols come from? Because they have meaning. They are not there because they are cool. So there is your pathway. You see the pattern forms a geometry, your brain completes it, builds an archetype, and then encodes it as a symbol. Lastly, just if you want to actively start engage with this, a sigil is a deliberate encoding of a meaning and emotion into a symbol. It's something that can be stored in the deep, deep recesses of your memory, and it's easy to recall. Therefore, yes, it is used in various forms of magic, but forget about that. Think of how you can store meaning for yourself. How can you encode things that are important to you so you can have easily access to them? Think of the implications for something like ontological coaching, where it's about emotional states. Can I just encode emotional states into emojis and use them as sigils? That's something to think about. Lastly, just add on, mythology is a narrative compression. So when you build the entire story on the mystery, you encode it as something that has to be transferred orally and intergenerationally. You build a story. We have the Egyptian mysteries, the Greece, the Chinese, the Norse, the Indian, the Mesopotamian, and many others. It is how we encode our complete body of knowledge and transfer it, when those who can write are few and far in between. And from the looks of it, we are going back there at the moment. So yeah, that's just, it reveals recurring archetypes. Not all gods in mythology are equal, but sometimes they represent the same thing in different layers. Zeus, Apollo, Hyperion, Helios. Aren't they the same thing, or are they different aspects of the same thing? But they all encode something very specifically. Kronos versus Kairos. Gaia. This is the eternal night. Funny how that is two opposites, and people think Gaia is just the planet Earth. Yeah, study mysteries and get a new picture. Just go to the presentation fully here. So here I would like to sort of just pay homage to John DeMartini. I'm not going to go through the full infographic I did there, but I think organizing mystery into a system of thinking, for me, started by working with John DeMartini and a lot of the work he does. I think I went on a different track, but I will always be thankful for John of organizing, saying, think about between disciplines, understand how different thing works together. Nothing is just one thing. And what does it mean? What is the meaning? And when scientists discover this, what is the bigger implication for the human psyche, for the human experience, rather than, oh, they discovered the Higgs boson particle at CERN. Yeah, great, scientific tick. It's got much deeper implications because it's an expression of consciousness. So, once again, thank you. And I sort of acknowledge John for being inspirational in setting me on this path and basically helping me to focus this lens, which has been with me for a long time. And as I said, I will have a big quote from him. So all these debates that you see on YouTube between religious people and atheists and internal consciousness versus field consciousness, all of these. This is my favorite quote from John on all these matters. For those who believe, no proof is necessary. For those who do not believe, no proof will suffice. So waste not your efforts on those who want not. So for many people, I will say, is it worth the clicks to sell your soul to have debates which lead nowhere? As Blaise Pascal said, the intelligence of the heart has its reasons, which reason does not know. What a beautiful statement. So, now we are going to just briefly look at the modern hunger for mystery. Why mystery always creates something almost magical. So think about this. Some of the most viral books, film series, I would classify as mystery. Harry Potter, The Lord of the Rings, The Da Vinci Code. What about Star Wars and Indiana Jones? They all speak to a deeper part of the human psyche. When Disney was actually still a family-orientated company and brought us faithful retellings of fairy tales or folk tales, they become intergenerational. Think of the power of the original Snow White. And now everybody just hopes to forget the most recent attempt. And that spans so many. We can think of modern, the computer game culture. Assassin's Creed is deeply steeped in mystery traditions. So why are these things so popular? So I've got a nice newspaper here. So the archaeological discovery of the century. Excavation at remote Himalayan site reveals the final truth. We know nothing. I just think it's beautiful. So there you have it. I forgot to mention Narnia. And once again, think about now they want to demystery it and fill it with ideology and politics, do you think it will work? I don't think so. Why mystery narratives captures the modern mind? The infinite, it shows us hidden worlds, it shows us the power of the initiatory journey, and we'll get to why initiatory journeys are so important when it comes to wisdom. Not all wisdom is for everyone. It really resonates at a deep psych level with the symbol and the archetype. It invites you to participate in the journey of discovery. That is one of the most important things. And it gives you a meaning and a sense of belonging to something more than what you observe in the world around you. Whether historical or fictional, the formula is ancient. The impact is real, but the need for the human mind to experience mystery is timeless. One of our, this is from Harry Potter to various other ideas, the enchanted child. The fairy tales planted mystery in the modern imagination, and it starts speaking to us pretty much before we can walk. I had a colleague once who said that he stopped counting watching The Lion King at number 200 with her two children. But why is this so? The child senses a world beyond the ordinary, a sense of wonder, the initiation. Stories begin, the journey unfolds, it asks you for courage and transformation. This is deeply embedded in the human psyche. Fairy tales plant symbols deep in the psyche. You see the archetype expressing itself. It's not just Simba and Mufasa versus Scar, it is two archetypes in a dance. From the Brothers Grimm Disney fairy tales, before adults seek mystery consciously, children are already living it symbolically. There is the hidden door, the threshold. Think of Narnia and the wardrobe. The ordinary world gives way to the unknown. Alice falls down the rabbit hole. Two worlds. There's a reality, and then there is a deeper layer. And there is an awakening. Mystery begins when a hidden layer is discovered, whether you're Peter Pan or Wendy or Harry Potter. The portal story tells us that the visible world is only the surface. There is a call to adventure. We long, as humans, for discovery, novelty, and the unknown. That's why we are not living as a group on some mountain as a collective. We wanted to explore, we wanted to go out, we wanted to see the world. I think the popularity of the Indiana Jones movies, Tomb Raider, Pirates of the Caribbean. Mystery turns whenever the human spirit seeks wonder beyond the familiar. And yes, Pirates of the Caribbean is steeped in mystery. Think about what is sought in every story. What is the hidden narrative? What is the archetypes used? The symbology. The last one they sought, the elixir of life, which is literally the transformation of the alchemical process. What is your experience? So the myth is reborn as cinema. You see the journey, the transformation, and the call to action. The hero's journey is to descend in a disenchanted age. Somebody wants to have a successful movie, you need to create a new Lord of the Rings, a new Narnia, or a new Star Wars, without ideology and Yeah, well, with real archetypes and real stored narrative. The quest, the journey calls the ordinary person, the inadequate person, into a destiny. There is a burden. A meaning grows through sacrifice and responsibility. Just think how that has been removed from many narratives today, and that's why people don't like it. You do not achieve greatness by being somebody or waking up as somebody. You do it through sacrifice. The transformed hero returns, but he is not the same anymore. So when shared myth faded, cinema began rebuilding it in a symbolic form. That's why these movies were so successful. 3 modern gateways. Wonder, the world is higher than we knew, the abyss. Beneath underlies the unknown, and myth, life becomes a symbolic initiation. Spielberg got it. I don't know whether he still has it. Stanley Kubrick really understood it, for those who want to go there. And of course, Steven Spielberg's partner, George Lucas, they got it. Modern cinema responded, reopened doors to awe, dread, and mythic meaning. That's why we still yearn for these movies. Quite an interesting, since Highlander is back on people's radar. Think of why a movie that was not supposed to work. It's not just Freddie Mercury that made Highlander work, or a combination of Christopher Lambert and Sean Connery. Henrik, you've got your work cut out for you, Mr. Clavel. What is Highlander? It's immortality. The self belongs and endures beyond time. Destiny, a hidden calling, shapes an exceptional life. Power, memory, struggle that passes through generation, the lineage of time. Cult classics become cult classics because they awaken patterns that are deeper than just the plot. And that gives us a code beneath history, hidden knowledge, symbols, and the hunger for meaning. Symbol meaning hides in plain sight. Archive, the past speaks through fragments. Think of the Da Vinci Code, think of National Treasure, think of Tomb Raider. Hidden history, sacred art, coded meaning. And it requires us to step in and discern what was hidden. Mystery deepens with official narratives when they feel too thin. And then lastly, the one everybody really loves is the monster within, because we all know we have it. Carl Jung would call it not really the shadow, because the shadow is just everything that's repressed, but the monster is repressed as well. Your inner vampire, your inner werewolf. Where are you a zombie? And where have you responded to the call of Cthulhu? The hunger, the shadow, the transformation that is required. We fear the most when it reveals the face which is our own. And yes, reality becomes a labyrinth. Dream, simulation, time, and instability of the real. Think of Interstellar. Think of Inception. Oh well, they're all Nolan movies. Well, Nolan did get that one right, or those right. Simulation. Think of The Matrix. The world may be constructed. Identity shifts between layers. Inception. Time, meaning, spans across perception. In modern mystery, consciousness itself becomes the threshold. That is why studying consciousness is actually worth doing, but if you're willing to do it objectively. So yes, the psyche still needs mystery. story, symbol, transformation. Mystery is not escape from reality, which you will go back to the spirituality video, but the refusal to let reality become flat. We need to require wonder, initiation, and meaning. So that is just the modern need for mystery. Now we move on to the historical river of mystery. I'm quickly going to do this. I'm not going to spend too much time. We tend to lose track. This is going to be a very long video, so certain areas I will try to just abbreviate. So please just walk with me. So from mystery starts with the four primal civilization nexuses. You can make it 6 if you want to put the Andean and the Mesoamerican centers there. But we've got Yangtze on the Yangtze River in China. We have the Indus River civilization, Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro. We've got Sumer, Akkad, and Ur in Sumeria. And we have Nubia, and I'm not sure of the lower names because they changed a lot throughout the different dynasties, and from Memphis all the way to Aswan. We had the city of that became Heliopolis, that became Cairo, Alexandria. But by the time of Alexandria, we're talking way past what we're talking about here. This is about 3,300 to 2,800 before Christ, because we're talking about archetypes. All the BCE people, you're still saying before Christ, whether you like it or not. You'll have to go all Robespierre if you want to get rid of that. Then around about 600 to 450 BC, we have something strange that occurs in those nexuses. Although Sumer has now moved all the way to Persia, it's still in the same region. We see the Indus have moved to the Ganges, and of course, China has become the Yellow and the Yangtze River. And you saw Nubia going in Lower Egypt, Upper Egypt, all the way into the Aegean. The mystery trajectory spread. But in China we have Confucius and Lao Tzu. In the Indus, the Ganges, we have Siddhartha Gautama, Buddha. In Persia, we have Zarathustra or Zoroaster. And outflow of the Egyptian mystery schools, the Aegean mysteries, we have Socrates. And I will put it directly to you that I don't care who you are, but you are thinking along the lines that was influenced by those four people. You cannot escape that. That is what makes that such a crucial nexus. Then we go into an area after that into an area of compression. We had institutionalization and wars. I'm not going to go too deeply, but you see Christianity going out of its Jewish and mystery roots into an institution. And for lots of discussions, it was probably necessary, given the upheavals that took place over the next 1,000 years before, once again, you saw the release. But you saw also in that time, going to Damascus and Baghdad, how these mystery traditions were propagated and protected under Islam. And then we've got this crunch that takes place called the Crusades that reopens. There's lots to be said about the Crusades, and a lot of people have lots of opinions about it. But one thing that the Crusades and even the Reconquista did is it opened communication between different worlds again. And with that came the flow of the mystery traditions and the mystery insights. And that brings us to the Renaissance. And if you don't know If you can't see the link between the Renaissance and mysteries, then this is not your video. Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Giordano Bruno. We can start with Nicholas of Cusa. There's just so much there. That, of course, that leads us to the Church Reformation in the Age of Empire. Once again, lots of opinions these days. But what happens now is it becomes a global search for mystery and meaning. So now all these strands are connected, and we even discover the Mesoamerican, the African, Polynesian mysteries. And we see that there is this tradition across cultures, across the globe, of people seeking themselves, seeking meaning, seeking a higher understanding through archetypes, patterns, and symbols. Of course, then we have the industrial age, and we see a free-for-all. The result, Mimetic Order of the Golden Law, Helena Blavatsky, Aleister Crowley, we see all the spiritualism, all of that, as people start seeking a new way of experiencing the world, but they're not grounded in the mysteries, and so it's sort of chaos. And then fortunately now in the modern times we see more of Manly P. Hall writing up the library, Carl Jung seeing the archetype, and Joseph Campbell saying, but how do we encode this into stories? And now we are in an age where we are now seeing how neuroscience is confirming this, how those who are really interested in deep psychology says, but yes, this is how it's working. It is how consciousness expresses itself through what is being human. So I'm not going to look at all these slides individually. I can do a separate video if you really want to on each of them. Just wanted you to see the path, and that mystery traditions comes a long way, and there's a hidden lineage across time to where we are today. Modern interpreters of mystery. This is very important. Carl Jung. A lot of my work always brings me back to Carl Jung. Once again, he is just such a pivotal person because he was not afraid. He went into discussions with Pauli about physics. He was a psychologist. He was Freud's acolyte before he did his own thing. He was deeply into philosophy. He read up on religions and the way religion works. Same with spirituality. And he studied the human experience. Some of the most beautiful work of Jung that you can do is the work he did when he became aware that he was nearing his end, and he studied people die. If you struggle to if you really want to go into consciousness, the story of the ego approaching death, and the final sort of interview where people ask him, do you believe in God? And he said, I don't have to, because I know. Because he saw something much deeper than science or religion wants to explain to you. And that something is something we all will confront at some stage. But that's a video for another day. So Jung brings us the archetype, the shadow, dreams, the self, individuation. Mystery is the unconscious becoming visible through image, symbol, dream, and archetype. It is how your subconscious mind communicates. It's literally the machine code of your brain. And yet we continue to ignore it. Manly P. Hall, he really... There's just no way I'm ever going to read all his books. Mostly because a lot of what I wrote I don't agree with. But he did encode all those symbols, all the traditions, sacred geometry, initiatory traditions, ancient mythologies, religious symbols, alchemical images, temples, rituals, hidden teachings, all shows that mystery survives through symbolic continuity, long before it becomes doctrine, dogma, and explanation. So you will not escape Jung and Hall. Let's look at Joseph Campbell. Of course, everybody is familiar with the hero's journey, the call, the threshold, the descent, the ordeal, the revelation, the transformation, and the return. And maybe I should just mention here that this is not just, oh, you bumped your toe and it was sore and you had to deal with it. In the true alchemical sense, we are talking about the dark night of the soul, the rebuilding of the self, the expression of the self, and the return. The negredo, the albedo, the citronitis, and the rubedo. Campbell shows that mystery is not only seen in symbols, it is lived as a journey of initiation and return. And that is where I will have to ask you, is your life a journey of initiation and return? Hint, I don't care who you are, it is. So yes, these three authors form the gateways. And once you see the sort of the pattern between them and how they work together to give you different lenses, mystery becomes something we can study. Mystery is the language through which consciousness encounters what it does not yet understand. It appears inwardly as archetype, culturally as a symbol, and developmentally as a pattern. Some modern authors of note, I'm just going around through them. There's lots of videos from them on YouTube. Go and watch them. Jonathan Pageau, I love you, Jonathan. Bit too orthodox, pun intended, but understanding of symbology and narrative and how it works together, especially in the Christian context, a really beautiful way of looking at the world. You really broke open the book of Genesis for me in 2 of your lectures. So I really support you and I learn a lot from you. Symbols are not just decorations. Narratives encode structure and meaning. Hierarchy shapes perception. Sacred stories re-enchant the world. Modernity must recover symbolic literacy. So Pageau shows us that the veil is symbolic. The world is structured by story, image, hierarchy, and meaningful correspondence. Another interesting scholar I discovered, Angela Puka, academic studying witchcraft and esotericism. Interesting person, once again. Love the work, love the fact that you brought this into a scholarly, structured, and accessible way, Angela. Magic and occult currents, witchcraft and paganism, esotericism and symbolism, shamanism and lived practice, scholarship without ridicule or consolidation, because that problem of many people that comes from the reductionist side is it's all nonsense, or it is all two-dimensional. Can I put it in a little package? You can't. And Angela brings back that perspective. He shows us that evil can be studied with a veil, not evil, sorry. Studied seriously with scholarship, context, and discernment, without volatile, confusing, and sensationalization. So think about a lot of the scientists and philosophers, the outrage That's just nonsense. Well, yeah, well, for you it is. You cannot benefit from it. Remember this thing. The moment you judge something, you exclude yourself from the ability to learn from it. And just to link it to actually being in this world, our neuroscientist Andrew Newberg shows us that the brain participants in spiritual experience. You cannot separate it. That's the problem with many of these scientific approaches. You cannot objectify experience. And yeah, this contribution is not the same as an exhaustive explanation. So read his work, listen to him speak. Andrew, good work. So these are modern scholars and people that have something to say and something to teach us. Take a look at their work. The path of initiation, I'm going to have to run through most of the rest. We are way over time now. And I don't want to split this because I just want to introduce you to mystery. So I'd rather go long today and be mindful of the fact that I'll just give you an overview. Most of these we can go into a lot more detail. So before you go into any initiatory path, you need to be prepared. Then you need to be separated. Then you go through an initiation ceremony. You have to go through a death and rebirth, the integration, and progressive revelation or return. Symbol as compression, state-dependent knowledge, controlled exposure, embodiment as your final gate. Most initiatory path is, how do I handle the knowledge that I have? What do I do with what I know? Because if I act from the ego, I'm going to use it to hurt myself and others. So initiation is not to gain power, to become worthy of it. So all these people who claim that, oh, the knowledge has been hidden from us, oh, if everybody can just know this, don't listen to them because they are not grounded in what the information really is. Once again, go back to Jung. Those who operate out of the ego will experience the shadow. Those who operate from the higher self will have a greater experience and be of benefit to everyone. This is just part of the human psyche. So anything that focuses on exalting yourself at the expense of others or to put others below you is not, or well, that is what happens when mystery is done wrong. So our path here is, first you are outsider or you are profane. And when it comes to the mystery, most people are there, and it seems like most people are quite happily there. Then you have the acolyte or the aspirant, the person drawn to the mystery but still outside. The initiate is the one who crosses the threshold and enters into the world. Then there is the practitioner who applies the teaching, the master who embodies and transmits meaning, and the sage who becomes transparent wisdom. There are not many of them, but you will know when you meet them. Initiation is not just access to knowledge, it's a structure unfolding of a capacity, a character, and symbolic understanding. Why do you need it? Because, first of all, symbolic literacy. If you don't know what these things mean, how can you just interpret them? Humility. The more you study mystery, the more you realize that you are not alone and that you are responsible for yourself and others. Ethical maturity. We are not here to abuse, but we are here to serve. And that is at the heart of many of the initiation paths. Containment of paradox. Different thing we can look at some stage is paradoxes and the ability to hold paradoxes, not to force a single outcome. And then disciplined practice. I've seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants, Isaac Newton said. Why do you think he said that? What do you think he studied in his spare times? Wasn't he a master alchemist? Oh, yeah. If you go into the ego versus somebody who has walked the path, someone who's walked the path receives the lineage, learns through discipline, holds the paradox, and is transformed by the path. The more and the higher the paradoxes you can hold, the bigger your sphere of influence. Initiation protects mystery from the ego. The ego from what it is not ready to bear. Think of Ryan Holiday's The Ego is the Enemy. But it is not to be killed, it is there to serve you. So, just the concept of a lot of initiation is the mundane. The simple things. Why? Because the simple things grounds you. It shows you that you are here and that you have to interact with the world. It is there to take you closer to your true self, as Jung would say, for individuation, and to express yourself, and that means self-transformation, so that you can carry a light in this world for those who are seeking. The mistake, especially at the acolyte level, is that you want to tell this to everybody. Most people don't care. If you're watching this video, you're probably one of the people who do. And thank you. The initiate does not escape the world. He returns carrying a deeper and an inner fire. Favorite quote attributed to Lao Tzu about embodied wisdom: before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. A scholar I once talked to said, well, I've never met an enlightened person. And my reaction was, how would you know? The enlightened person will be busy chopping wood and carrying water. He's not out there on a crusade trying to convince the masses, because he knows that is not his place. He is there to live his life to the full, influence those who want to be influenced, and leave a legacy for those who would follow. Difficult concept. Systems of Mystery is part 6. Symbolic technologies for reading the soul, will, and hidden order. Think of our concept. Symbols, archetypes, patterns. What do they represent? Time, cycle, soul, psyche, space and environment, transformation and initiation, the seen and the unseen, the path of becoming. Major traditions, astrology. You can learn a lot from studying astrology. Don't use it for divination. It is there to map the human soul. Tarot is a map of the archetypical journey of man. Once again, if you want to use it for divination, you can, but you will hear what you want to hear. That's unfortunately how the brain works. But the system of tarot is actually quite beautiful. And you see our cover image is the High Priestess, the Hermit, and the Hierophant. 3 tarot major arcana, because they are literally the irreducible side of the human brain. Alchemy. Seen from Manly P. Hall's perspective and from a personal transformation perspective, alchemy becomes something very special. I would postulate that the whole thing about gold was the obsession of greed of the Middle Ages. Alchemy was never about making lead into gold, it was transforming yourself, your unrefined self, into pure light. Feng Shui, very important concept that I never really took that seriously before I started studying mystery, and we'll see that it actually plays a big role, especially when working with the genus loci. We'll get to that. Shared function. Mystery helps human beings read the hidden grammar, and we have systems in which encode. That's why people like these things, whether they like it or not. I know of high-powered executives who just glance the astrology section every day and you wonder why. Of course, there's a hunger. The I Ching, about polarity, timing, and response. Great work's done on the I Ching, and scary how accurate it is, but once again, don't think it's there for divination purposes. It's there to reveal where you are in your mind. And of course, Kabbalah is also a very prominent theme these days, and people tend to want to misuse it for everything. But it is a mystery system and a way of reading the world. It is about the ascent and the descent of the soul. And there's other stuff we can look at that you can take note of: palm leaf traditions in India, oracle bones and dragon bones in China, ruins in the Nordic countries, geomancy, and local and shamanic systems. The systems of mystery are symbolic ways of reading reality, soul transformation, time, and hidden order beneath everything. So please take note, when I'm talking about this, it's about understanding and how mystery traditions encoded the mysteries. I'm not using this to say go and read your astrology chart every day. Although I must admit, after doing a lot of Jungian work, I actually got an impulse to have my sidereal chart done. And looking at my life story through a Jungian lens, and then putting the sidereal chart beside it was quite a scary experience. The thing about it is that if you told me, say at age 17, here's your sidereal chart, this is what it means, I would not have predicted, Michael. And I don't think anybody would have. But now, in retrospect, understanding how my life played out in archetypical terms, and seeing the sidereal chart, yeah, I would not dismiss it as random. But yeah, you might. So just remember, there's different ways of looking at these things. Alchemy is our first major tradition, and you'll see that it's really about the discovery of the Holy Grail, which is yourself, through the Philosopher's Stone, through the process of the Negredo, the Albedo, the Citronitas, and the Rubedo, so that you can have the elixir of life. I'm going to leave it there. We're not going to deeper, but you'll find this in many places. And it's funny how many people just don't want to accept this. The Holy Grail is the search for yourself. It is the individuation process from Jung. It is the Dagschein from Heidegger. Astrology. You've got the 12 houses forming 12 areas of your life. So many people will say, oh, astrology just comes from zoology. It's just the circle of the animals. Yeah, but it's an encoded system that reflects your life. The planets are the major forces intersecting your life. Got Rahu and Ketu, which is your life path. And then you've got your tropical sign, which is your how. And your sidereal, which is your why. And quite interesting, the Chinese one then becomes, where do you fit into the greater scheme of things over time? I would have dismissed all of this out of hand a year ago, but having seen the results and asking myself, learning the concepts, and stripping out the fluff, it's actually a map handed down over millennia for us to understand the human psyche and how it operates. But it's one way to look at it, it's not the only way. We sort see tarot, you can think of characters like the Fool, the Emperor, Death, Sun, the World, the Devil. Death is just transformation. The seed must die before it is reborn. An old cycle has to end before a new one can begin. The Fool is starting out knowing nothing and going on your journey, knowing the path that you will walk. The Sun is your higher self expressing itself in its fullness. The World is just, once again, completion of cycles. The Emperor is you having integrated your ego and your shadow. My mystery archetypes, the Hermit, the Hierophant, and the High Priestess, forms the irreducible part of the human mind. The tarot reveals the path of the soul, the archetypes, the initiations, the transformation, the wholeness. If ever you're struggling with the concept of tarot, go and look at the Five of Wands card and just say to yourself, everybody was kung fu fighting. And with that, I'll leave it there. So, you can learn a lot from studying tarot, alchemy, and astrology. Strip out the fluff and see how the human mind works. And it's a story of the transformation and discovering yourself. Other traditions call it other things, but in the end you are called to discover who you are, why you are here, and express yourself. Feng Shui, you see the Qi, the Yin and the Yang, placement, the environment, the flow, the five elements, all how they are aligned. There's so much to be said about Feng Shui, and I'm not going to say that this is something I understand at a deeper level. I simply haven't had time to really go into it, but I do understand that it's a map of the local field of consciousness and your place in it. So you would want to construct your environment so that your mind or psyche can flow through it and express itself. Philosophies of mystery, I'm really quickly going to go through this. You've got Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, Christian mysticism, Jewish mysticism, Sufism, Gnosticism is your major stuff, all on a shared quest. There's a common arc in all of them, a hidden source, a descent into form, an awakening and transformation, and a return to union. Visible points to the invisible, the soul can awaken and ascend. Symbol, ritual, and contemplation reveal the truth. Reality has layers beneath appearances. The streams differ in language, but the emphasis the same part. So quickly there, whether you study Rumi and Ibn Arabi or I always forget his name, not Singh, but the great philosopher of the Sufi and Halafi traditions, there's a general story here that spans all the traditions and human history. Are they all the same? I'm not claiming that. Do they all have an arc? Yes, they do. And remember, each only sees in part. By looking at all of them and maintaining them, we are seeing a bigger picture than by just individual lenses. So we don't reject any lens, but we are cognizant of where they fit into the picture. We do not have the entire picture, but by looking at all the lenses, we form a greater picture. In fact, I will say the entire picture is not knowable. Anybody who claims it is knowable, yeah, I don't even want to go there. I don't want to disparage people, but you don't know what you're talking about. There is a part of human understanding, expression, and experience which is simply undefinable, irreducible, and unknowable. But by looking at all the aspects of how it expresses itself, we get a bigger picture. So enough of the my silo is the only silo. Please. Just quickly, Metacism, Neoplatonism, and Gnosticism is sort of in pop spirituality these days, but somehow they just blend it into one thing. It is not. True Metacism is not Neoplatonism or Gnosticism. Gnosticism is at heart dualistic. Neoplatonism is non-dualistic. It's about oneness. And the Metacism doesn't have an opinion. It just says the all is mind and the mind is all. So maybe it's more Neoplatonist than Gnostic. But please do not confuse that. And when people put these together as a single concept, once again, this is not somebody you would want to entertain for too long. Yes, we need to understand these concepts these days because they have become relevant in modern times, but please understand the differences. Metacism is about cosmos. The cosmos is a living system and symbol. All is mind and mind is all, as above, so below. As below, so above. Neoplatonism is the one, beyond all things. Reality unfolds by emanation. The soul returns by contemplation and ascent. Gnosticism is about a hidden spark, it's about imprisonment in a world of icons and liberation through gnosis. The big debate is between Neoplatonism and Gnosticism, which is inherently not the same. And it really irks me when people try and enforce them into the same system. You can look at the other mystery traditions from Buddhist mysticism, the Vedanta, Jewish mysticism, Taoism, Sufism, Christian mysticism. I'm not going to spend much time here talking about Bhakti, Zen, Chan, Hesianism, the Kabbalah. There's so many systems. Ask yourself, why would people believe that in the first place? Why would people go there? What are they trying to encode? What are the insights that they bring before you just dismiss it out of hand? Initially traditions, once again, I'm briefly just going to mention that we have different paths. If modern Freemasonry, I'm not actually there yet. What is preserved? What do they offer? The shadow side, where did it go wrong? And modern expressionisms like Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, Eastern Orderism, the Shriners, and so forth. Are they just clubs where people have drinks together? That's not how they started. You can go into that. Each of them has encoded wisdom. Don't reject it out of hand, but yes, also be cognizant that not each has a complete picture. I'm not going to delve too deeply Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism. And I will quickly mention that if you are not grounded and do not Going to get to that towards the end as well. You get to Theosophy, Thelema, Transcendental Magic, people like Crowley, Levi, and Blavatsky. But even Blavatsky, you can learn from her, but be cognizant of her limitations and her understanding. So I would not start there. I would rather start with Jung, with Hall, and with Campbell. Some practices, how people express it at the moment, ritual practices, contemplative practices, shamanic indigenous practices, embodied integration, even down to ontological coaching, magical and symbolic practices, and nature-based practices. Symbol is a way of expressing itself, is used, and there are many traditions across the world. Lived mystery is the movement from belief about hidden reality to disciplined participation in the symbol, embodied and contemplative practices. I'm not going to go there to understand the debate between Wicca and witchcraft, what each one is. Well, they say there's about 100 million Wicca practitioners worldwide. That's significant. Witchcraft is not as clearly defined, but it's much older, and it's a way of looking at the world. Yeah, there's things you can learn from it, but once again, it's a single lens. Types of magic comes from witchcraft. You've got ritual magic, ceremonial magic, folk magic, sigil magic, chaos magic, psychological and symbolic magic, which you can use for good or bad. Some people will swear by it, others will say it's nonsense. Once again, what are we doing? Why does ritual magic have a certain effect on people that makes them live better lives, and for others it doesn't? Ceremonial meanings, folk magic. Sigils is a very powerful thing. What you do with it, chaos magic, maybe too close to Crowley for my liking, and psychological and symbolic magic. Once again, visualization and picture. So, see the end in mind, or see yourself in the end state. It's a form of magic. What is very popular is meditation, prayer, silence, fasting, breath and body practices, pilgrimages, journaling and reflection. Devotion, yes, this also forms magic. Contemplative practices is mystery made quiet, disciplined, refinement of attention until reality, self, and sacred depth can be perceived differently. The contemplative practice is about inner alignment. That's why it's so closely linked to the spiritual concept of alignment, resonance, and coherence. Some useful concepts. Don't once again want to stop here. Let's just go quickly through it. Numerology, memory wheels, sacred geometry, patterns and symbol archetypes, sigils. But don't forget the modern concepts. Infographics, concept graphs, and diagrams. These are directly linked and based on mystery traditions. Of course, it's encoding of meaning. Why do we do it? Symbolic tools of perception, ways of structuring complexity, visual, memoric containers of meaning, and bridges between ancient insights and modern cognition. Sacred geometry I already mentioned, sigils we talked about, so I said understand our concept maps, visual frameworks, infographics, and mind maps are all modern descendants from memory wheels. Romano Lull and Giordano Bruno was the main thinkers there, and that comes from sigils. So it's just a system. Numerology, there's various forms of that. If you really study into that, We see the way that it is used by many people just as compression of numbers, but there is also Hypatia had her theory about from oneness fragmenting and dispersing into wider areas, so from the one all the way to integration and return and 7, which is, once again, the alchemical process. We've got the Babylonian occult story, which is, once again, it's the path of the self from the cosmic egg to becoming your higher self. So mystery is a practical tool. Look at our gallery, and it's not an extensive library, neither is it comprehensive, but all these people were known to be mystery thinkers. That doesn't work. Sorry, Albert. All these people were known mystery thinkers. We've got Albert Einstein there. You should get Leonardo da Vinci there. You see Nikola Tesla. So yes, the Akashic records fall under mysteries. William Blake, have you ever seen his paintings and his poetry? Oh, Tiger Burning Bright. Once again, we've got Carl Jung. And this is more there because he is so cross-dimensional and the master of dreams. And of course, Giordano Bruno. Ever seen it, the Flammarion? Beautiful picture about seeing the mystery behind the ordinary. So what makes mystery great is that when you study it, it helps your brain to structure information for the reticular activation system. Goals, learnings, relationship, meaning, opportunities, growth, direction. That you completely holding attention becomes easier to perceive, select, and act upon. So when I studied mystery, really engaged with it for about 2 months, after that it became the most productive mind work in my entire life, as I was able to see things differently from different perspectives, as I've never done before. And it's only because your brain now is literally function at the level where you are talking into it in its own language. So really is, and I developed a whole system I called symbolic visual narrative thinking. All the way from mind maps to sigils, and you literally forcing your brain to start talking in that language, but you be working with it, you can now also perceive it. In an upcoming video, I will also speak about the observer. Our perspective here is just being able to step back and hold the paradox. So whether you're doing dilemma reconciliation or both and thinking, it is about regulating and integrating paradoxes. And that is what that comes to. Let's see, yeah, we can. Paradoxes is about not choosing one of the two poles, but allowing both to get you to a higher perspective. From astrology, I derived a 144 node field of your consciousness, your localized personal consciousness. The cartography of you. Across 12 houses, 12 domains, asking the questions. Who are you? If you go through this exercise, you will not see yourself in the same way again, especially if you map the actual where you are now and where you would like to go. And it also shows you why small changes can have a huge effect. Visualization. There's a lot to be said, but the more I work with mystery and human cognition and consciousness, I know it's been, what can you say, just muddied through the law of attraction genre, but true visualization is about mastering your mind and manipulating consciousness inside your mind. Whether there's outcomes or not, that's different debates. But we do know that people who do that, once again going back to the observer, and do it very intensely, will actually always see someone watching, which can be very scary, or it can be very encouraging depending on your perspective. And as I mentioned, symbolic visual narrative thinking is literally connecting stuff. Not thinking in silos, but having depth and width. And coming to new systems and frameworks and just seeing how things flow. I always say there's sort of, you can think of things in terms of pictures, objects, and static versus node, connection, and dynamic versus field, wave, and expression. Once you start looking at field, wave, and expression, the world changes a lot. I just want you to start thinking. So I'm not going to explain all of these concepts. Now, I can go into them if you would like me to. Ritual state architecture. Threshold between ordinary consciousness and intentional consciousness. Where is your focus? Where are you expressing yourself? Role fluidity, quite interesting. Based on archetypes, do you know that in every area of your life you should be the generator or creator? You should be the manager and the maintainer and the director and strategist. If you're struggling in finances, well, maybe you're not being the director of your finances. I've got areas in my life, trust me, just where I'm struggling. But it's easier if you map it from the perspective, what is my role? And ask yourself, what is it that I am creating? What do I have to maintain? And where do I have to direct it? Because that takes us into the core of consciousness, which is wave behavior. Relationships in the field. Once you see that we as humans are innately geared to relate to stuff, whether it's a football while on a deserted island, your favorite pot plant, or people. You have a relationship with everything. It's the way humans think. But the moment you have a relationship, you create a third entity, which is the actual relationship itself. And it's an amazing way of looking at the world. It's not me and you, there's a us as well. And the us can be less or more than the sum of its parts. If it is in alignment, it will be more than the sum of the parts. If it is not in alignment, if it's chaotic, then it will of course detract from its parts. Projection hygiene. How do you show up? What do you perceive? What do you see in others? Because mostly what you see in others are the parts of yourself which you are either infatuated with or shocked by. But you are human, so whatever you don't like in other people is in you too. The hero's journey, mythic reframing, allows you to descend and look at ordeals from the perspective of personal growth and development. Everything that happens to you can be seen as a path of learning. So that whether you control it or not, there's so many debates about that. I'm not going there in this discussion, but what you take from what happens to you is what makes you you. Think of, there's an old Christian fable by a writer called Hannah Abbott, Hinds Feet on High Places. And spoiler learning, every trauma that you go through is what makes you you. It's what makes you unique, which gives you value. It is not your shame. Your shame is actually what makes you you. And by embracing it and turning that lead into gold, you can make a difference in this world. Understanding synchronicities and patterns, seeing meaning. Why did I pick up that book and not the other? In that situation, why did that person come to me and speak to me? Carl Jung has got a lot to say about synchronicities. Iain probably had 10-year discourse about synchronicities. Most people try to dismiss it, but I've had a lot of synchronistic experiences in my life to know that it's not just coincidence. Embodied practice. I am here to express myself. Where's my alignment? You'll see I didn't cover chakras in the previous section. That's my mission. Sorry for that. But yeah, your body is where you live. Your body is where you express yourself. So whether we're talking about somatic awareness, breath work, movement practice, vocal expression, mind-body coherence, or grounding rituals, embodiment turns your insight into presence and presence into action. And that is how you interact with the world. Environmental design. Think of Feng Shui. Think of workshops, classes, offices. What is the flow? What is the structure? Does it brighten you, cheer you up, or does it drag you down? Yes, I know if you're working in a cubicle, it's not that easy, but you can still put stuff in cubicles to enhance your flow. But yeah, think of your home environment. So there's your mystery toolkit. These are all just ways of where mystery can help you understand reality better and have a better experience. So it's an amazing thing to study as once you see the bigger picture and not get caught up in single traditions. Some distortions and cautions. Yeah, that is ChatGPT come up with the but what about? But it is necessary to talk about this because I mentioned Crowley, Blavatsky, and Levi. So think about obscurantism, when people use symbols to hide things, and status to control. When we have ego inflation, I am more spiritual than you because, really? Think of what Elon said in that interview. When practice becomes specialness and superiority and dependency, and then religion, when it is distorted into control, not for narrative, ritual, and communion, but for power, gatekeeping. I'm not going to go into individually, but understand that there is ways that mystery can go off the rails. And because it is so deeply connected to the human psyche, when mystery goes off the rails, it goes there deep. I think a lot of the people who understand, for instance, the law of attraction from a pop spirituality perspective, or are actually railing against it because it makes no rational sense for the reductionist, both sides is mystery gone wrong. There are parts of, I don't even call it the law of attraction, but there is synchronicity, as Jung would call it. that cannot be explained rationally. But you are also here to interact with the world and discover yourself. So whatever you create from your ego will hit you from behind in the shadow so you could learn to become self. It's the path of individuation. So rather than look for quick outs or just, I would like to have more comfort, that is not what mystery is for, and it will really teach you hard lessons if that is your angle. So mystery in service of the soul. We already mentioned the hunger. I'm just going to leave it up. You can read it quickly. I'm not going to go through it because there's certain prompts, questions you can ask yourself. And rather for me to ask you all the questions and give a pause, just ask yourself, what is my relation? Like, look at our question. Why do you think stories like Harry Potter and the Da Vinci Code were so successful? You're done here. Let's go to the next one. Mystery communicates through pattern, archetype, and symbol. Think of your questions. I'll leave it up for a couple of seconds. Participatory mystery. Mystery is not merely observed, it is entered. The archetypal world. Archetypes are recurring structures of the human experience. And maybe since we are talking, there's a lot of nonsense going on. Oh, discover your male archetype or your female archetype. And then there's 12 of each. No, that's not you. Lots of people say Machiavelli, Carl Jung, Neville Goddard, Edgar Cayce. They're all suddenly relationship, sex, money experts. No, they're not. There's so much slop, so be careful. When mystery goes wrong, mystery without grounding becomes distortion. We all talk about Epstein, but we don't talk about Crowley anymore. Oh, yeah, the algorithm probably not going to like that. But we must guard ourselves against mystery going wrong and falling into ungrounded practices. We are not here to hurt each other. We are here to be of service to one another. And you will discover that as you study mystery. Mystery and the authentic self. This is really how I got to mystery. The real project I need to get to is called Synthesis of the Self, but I had to build the entire wisdom tradition to ground it in, since I found that none of the literature really supports the integrated view. When we engage mystery authentically, we become home to ourselves. Restoring the bridge. Mystery is not a puzzle to be solved, but a relationship to be lived. We restore the bridge by integrating wonder with wisdom, symbol with action, and the self with the self. The bridge has always been there. We simply choose to cross it together. So just some other areas of mystery. We need to fly through it. Dreams, Jungian dream analysis, your dream and archetypes. So if you have a dream, write it down. Ask your AI to give you a Jungian dream interpretation. And if you want to add spice to it, add the Ibn Arabi angle to it as well. The AI is very great to do that. That is amazing to see the archetypal analysis of a dream. concepts like lucid dreaming, Tibetan dream yoga, which is actually quite important because it's prepare yourself for sleep, an encounter with your subconscious mind. Do we do that? Do we build up into our sleep phase, and do we awake by decoding it, or are we just falling asleep because we don't care and waking or up in an already reactive frame of mind? Quite an interesting concept. Think of indigenous dream traditions, the vision quest, the dream work, the dream catchers and their role. These are all there for a reason. They all have their stories to do. They all have their path to unfold. So what this just means is that you have an appointment with yourself before you sleep. So yes, if you want to go to Neville Goddard, there's your cue. Cymatics, sound-making patterns, sacred geometry. You know that sound causes solids to form patterns. We have got the music of the spheres. From the ancients already saw the planets having sounds. How we know they do. We've got the Om resonant body chant, and what do they call them? Resonance symbols. The bowls. It affects you. Sit and chant Om for 5 minutes. It does align you somehow. And then, of course, in modern, a bit on the edge, don't want to go too much into it. There are people who claim that sound can be used to treat diseases. As always, as anybody doing this work will say, listen, if you have a medical issue, go and see a doctor. Do not ever go against professional medical advice. It is there for a reason. And of course, people found by looking at the Last Supper painting from Leonardo da Vinci, there's music encoded into it. Some people dismiss it, some like it. I don't know, but sound is important. There's also the collective trance. Sorry. This is foundational from our tribal heritage. And especially in religions, they understand this. In Sufism, we have the shared ecstasy. In evangelical Christianity, you've got praise and worship. In Pentecostal Christianity, you call being slayed by the Spirit. Trance dances. In shamanistic practices. Collective chanting in Buddhism. It is there, and we enter into a space above ourselves when we do get into unity. And maybe sometime I will do a separate video on that, because I've got some personal experiences that I can share from that. And it's amazing how when that is broken, it's almost as if there is a whiplash. And yes, they do use it in MLM marketing. From Amway to it's a system used to inspire and control. So there's a darkness to it, and that brings us to, you know, there's this painter in Germany in the 1930s. He and his buddies also used that, but don't forget those people in Russia who did the same, because we cannot talk about the one by ignoring the other. So yes, collective trance and unified fields exist. We enter into them, and it can be used against us. Ask Edward Bernays and Gustave Le Bon. So beware of the ethical parts of this and how people are manipulating you. Principalities and powers is quite an interesting one. And I have decided to actually do a separate video on that, so I'm basically just going to talk about it. It comes up in my video on the Observer as well. We do find that there are energy nexuses and that places do have spirits. The Romans called it the genius loci. Localized consciousness basins, place fields, and sovereignty. Unfortunately, once again, it's highly loaded to start talking about it because people either start with Rome or they start from Christian spiritual warfare. If you step back and you look at it, you see that places, cities, institutions, cultures shaped by localized fields exist in places. They've got symbology, they've got institution, they've got people of similar mind, similar visions. They have a collective memory and a shared history. So the field is maybe more than the actual place. So stay beyond demons and metaphor, and let's look at this from a disciplined inquiry, see what we can observe. And if you want to talk about this, there's two examples we can use. Looking at specific cities, I will say that understand the core principality concept. The power is the actual parts of the principality. And our city is Koningsberg or Kaliningrad, which now with the Ukraine war seem to start displaying the same nature it did during the Prussian times. Why is a city that was completely destroyed, the population expelled, the city was not really it was Russified, and it was given a Russian population, and now that Russian population is starting to display the characteristics of the city in Kant's time. Quite an interesting phenomenon. Put that against New York, which has got these layers. From the Lenape, the Dutch, the English industrial. It's located on an island, so it's got definitive geographical borders, and you've got wave upon wave of aspirant migration. And then you see where it's now on the decline because it has turned against its own spirit. Quite interesting to look at that. I'll just leave you with that. You can go and think. You don't have to agree with me. I'm not pushing an agenda. I'm asking you to think about it and ask yourself, what do you observe? So we have the field attributes, we've got the observer, and we've got a symbolic translation. The answer from that, from the mystery perspective, if you do get this and experience this, is that it's about sovereignty, not spiritual warfare. Light your inner fire. Step into your true self. But respect the genius loci. Don't attack it. Quite an interesting conclusion. So here, once again, there's a model for people who travel often, especially, or deal with different cultures. There's a working model you can impose to understand your position. So it's not proof of entities, it's not. It's a disciplined inquiry into how place, consciousness, memory, and manifestation converge. So here's our executive field alignment protocol. If you have experience of different vibes across places and cultures, something you can consider. If you want to, we can. As I already decided, I'm going to do a separate video on this somewhere in the future. Don't ask me when, but I think it's something worth looking at from an objective point of view, because there's so little out there. And there's beautiful, beautiful streams of insight from ancient times to modern times of talking about this, but it's a phenomenon that is rarely discussed. So, the cleansing of perception. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is infinite. William Blake. So this is sort of my last reflection for you. It is my rendition of the Sun card and Tarot. I leave you with this. What does this picture represent to you? What does the child remind you of? When did you last experience life from that perspective? Where is joy already present in your life? What part of you is ready to shine? How can you carry this energy forward? So yes, that is mystery in a 2-hour job. It's the longest video I've done, so thank you for bearing with me. I know I went through it fast. It's very dense. The idea was to establish just an overview of what mystery is. Obviously, there are some things I did not get to. And in time, this is not a finite body of work. It will definitely grow over time, and you're welcome to make contributions. But hopefully it just opened something in you and invited you to something. So from there I go to, this is my concluding slide. Mystery is not an escape from reality. It's a deeper way of participating in it. It's about returning to a world of wonder. A world where you can have harmony between yourself and the rest of the world. The journey ends where it began, with the world made strange, sacred, and alive again. Thank you for joining me here on the Hidden Bridge. Our next video we will go to psychology, and it's our first video on the right side, the reducible part of the brain. I see you there, and I look forward to sharing that with you.